All right, I did it. It wasn't easy. I had to dig deep, but I found some cons for living in West Linn, Oregon. And stay tuned to the end. I want to know if this is a pro or a con for you. This created quite the fiasco recently in West Linn. It has to do with driving. Maybe you have it in your town, so I'll be curious to see what you have to say about this one. But comment below on this last one. I want to know from you if it's a pro or a con. Pros and cons, West Linn, all that starts now. Hey everyone, Seth Marchant with the Home Team Brokers here. Welcome back to the channel, or if you are new to this channel, living in Oregon, and you'd like to see more about what it's like to live in Oregon, make sure and hit the subscribe button and tap the bell. That way you'll be notified every time we drop a new video, which is twice a week. And if you're somebody that's thinking about moving to Oregon, as licensed brokers in the state of Oregon, as much as we like to make these videos, we'd love to help you move here. So if you're one of those people, if you want to take one of the next steps to moving to Oregon, you can call us, text us, email us, or you can click the link below in the description if you want to get into our calendar and schedule a Zoom call with us. All right, West Linn, pros and cons, let's jump into it. And remember, I've got one for the end for you that I want you to stick around for and weigh in on. So the first thing I'm going to lead with here is actually going to be crime. Why crime? Well, because I know a lot of you watching are probably coming from out of state. Might live in California. We get quite a few calls from people from California, and Portland has been in the news quite a bit and a lot of that news has kind of revolved around things like crime and rioting and violence. Now, I'm sure a lot of that is sensationalist. I'm sure a lot of it is just done for views and clicks, but it is true that there are parts of Portland that crime has gotten kind of bad. Now, as realtors, you don't tend to hear this too much. You don't hear people in real estate or licensed real estate brokers talk about crime too much because we do have rules defined by the National Association of Realtors that sort of prohibit us from speaking specifically about crime in specific areas with our clients. But speaking to you more broadly as a broad audience and speaking about the crime more broadly, I can tell you that maybe some of the stuff you've seen on the news is true. Like I said, some of it's probably sensationalized, but there are some bad pockets of Portland. West Linn is not one of them. West Linn is ranked #1, not in the county, not in the Portland metro area, but #1 in the entire state for lowest crime. So if you're somebody that's moving here, maybe you've got a job that you're coming here for, and you're maybe a little bit worried about crime because of some of the things you've seen on the news, just know that there's plenty of places throughout Portland that really haven't experienced anything that you might have seen on the news, and West Linn is definitely one of those places. Now, West Linn ranks as one of the lowest crime towns every year, year in and year out. It just so happens they were #1 in 2022, but you can expect that year in and year out that West Linn is going to consistently be ranked as one of the lowest crime places in the entire state of Oregon. I was at the park with my wife just the other day, and she bumped into an old workout partner that had moved to somewhere in East Portland and recently moved back to this area around West Linn in Clackamas County because they'd gotten tired of explaining to their kids what all those fireworks were at night. Now, I've lived here my entire life in the Portland metropolitan area, not in Multnomah County, not in some of these areas that are really bad now, but hearing gunshots in residential or urban areas is incredibly uncommon. It's illegal to discharge a firearm within city limits. You do hear it a little bit when you get outside of the city, kind of into the rural areas with like people target practicing, but gunshots in the city is kind of a newer thing. It wasn't always this way, probably hopefully won't always be this way, but it is true that crime has gotten bad in some parts of Portland, and if that's really important to you, then West Linn should be at the top of your list as a place to move to. Next pro, strong sense of community. West Linn has about 26,000 people that live here, so not exactly a small suburb, but it does definitely have a small town feel to it. It's the type of place where people say hi when they walk past and wave to you when they walk by. Can't say that about a lot of places in Portland. There's a lot of events, a lot of community events, a lot of groups for people to connect, walking groups, running groups, moms groups, business groups. So West Linn really has a very strong sense of community, even though it's not a very small town. Next pro, and you probably know this, again, if you're watching this video, you're probably considering moving to West Linn. Top schools. West Linn has one high school, West Linn High School, one of the top rated high schools in the state. They have great grade schools and middle schools as well. They're building a brand new middle school by Willamette right now. Schools in Oregon are funded through property taxes, and property taxes are higher here in West Linn. So consequently, schools here in West Linn do tend to receive more funding. So you do have very good schools here in West Linn for that reason. A lot of people that have kids are moving to West Linn specifically for the schools. Next pro is parks. You may have noticed I am at a park. I'm at Willamette Park. West Linn has probably some of the best parks, I would say, in the Portland metropolitan area because they have big parks. This would probably be considered a big park, Willamette. And they have a lot of small parks too. There's not a lot of places that you could go in West Linn that you don't have a park that's walking distance. We've got the park that I'm at, Willamette, down here by Old Town Willamette. Up towards the top of the hill, you have Tanner Creek Park to kind of serve the people going up the hill and on the hill. And on the other side of the hill, down by 43, you have Mary S. Young Park. And then you've got about a dozen other small parks in between those. You also have Lucier Farm too. If you like walking trails like the one that I'm walking on right now, and you probably noticed throughout this video, haven't seen too many people passing by, so it's not super congested, not a lot of traffic through here. If you're a person that likes parks and walking trails, West Linn, it's as good as it gets. And people here are passionate about keeping the parks. I'll actually share with you a story. Recently, there's a park by where I live. It's just a couple of fields and a baseball field. It's a place that people kind of just take their dogs, you know, throw a frisbee, stuff like that. It was owned by the school district. The school district was selling that park. The park was going to be bought up by a developer, and they were going to put in, you know, probably new subdivision, maybe enough for like 30 houses or something like that. The name of this park is Oppenlander Park, by the way. And when the people of West Linn found out about this, they rallied together, they put a bond together, had a vote, got the bond passed, and raised the money to keep that a park rather than the school district actually selling that park to develop new homes. Now, yes, we do need new homes. There is a lack of homes. There is a shortage of construction, but sometimes people too just want to have extra space. They want to have extra parks. They want to have extra places for people to go. And West Linn is kind of one of those communities where you can kind of trust that the people are really going to take care and preserve the parks that are in this area. So if you're a parks person, if you're somebody that likes walking trails like the one that I'm on, West Linn is going to be at the top of your list for that reason. All right, here's a funny little pro for you. We now have a sparkling water dispenser right in downtown West Linn in Old Town in Willamette. I actually went before this video and tried it out. I hadn't tried it out before. I went and tried it out just for this video. And I'm good with regular water, but if you guys like it, you know, if you like sparkling water, then hey, you've got a sparkling water dispenser. Next on the list for pros, I would say this kind of ties in with like a small town, kind of small, tight-knit community type of feel. West Linn does have a handful of farms and vineyards. Now, that's not uncommon to Oregon. That's not quite uncommon to the Portland metropolitan area, but I will say that it's not common to find a place that's going to have farms and vineyards that has some proximity to Portland. Most of the towns that are going to have farms and vineyards are going to be like an hour away from Portland, so you're really going to be out there to kind of find that type of land. And here in Portland, farms are pretty popular. They're popular in the springtime for the produce, other things that they have to attract families. Fall time, of course, you've got your pumpkin patches and then your corn mazes and all that kind of stuff. So people like to do a lot of farm stuff in the springtime, summertime, fall time in the Portland metro area. And then obviously wine is huge here too. We have wine country, Willamette Valley, which is hour and a half away from the kind of Portland metropolitan area. But you do have some vineyards, you know, kind of scattered throughout the Portland metro area, right in some people's backyards. And West Linn has a handful of those as well. I think maybe 5 or so. I think there's maybe 5 or so off the top of my head. Might be 1 or 2, maybe small ones in there that I'm not thinking of, but which is quite a few. It's enough to go have your own wine tasting day just right at home in West Linn. So if you're somebody that likes farms and vineyards, and you don't want to have to travel all the way to wine country, that's going to be a huge pro for West Linn. All right, last pro, and then we're going to jump into the cons real quick here. West Linn has a great little downtown. It's known as Willamette. It was designated as a historic area in 2009, and it was recently renovated and updated maybe about a year ago. Maybe finished in 2021, something like that, and started in 2019, maybe 2020, something like that. Changed a lot of the downtown. And the town itself of Willamette, this old town, was not actually originally part of West Linn. West Linn actually started off as a handful of different communities around where like Bolton is and Sunset is. And Willamette at one point tried to annex and bring in those communities, but later those communities joined together to create West Linn, and then West Linn actually annexed Willamette into its borders. So things could have very well have gone the other way. This entire area could be considered Willamette rather than West Linn. That's the reason why the old town, the downtown, is called Willamette, is because it was once an incorporated area called Willamette and then was eventually brought in to West Linn. And it's a great downtown because it does get a lot of traffic. It brings a lot of people in for things like the farmers market. There's a food cart station down there now, which has been hugely popular. The fire station's right downtown. You know, Santa comes and visits at Christmas time. So the downtown in West Linn is definitely a popular place where a lot of people kind of sort of go. And it kind of strengthens that sense of having a greater community where you have this this area, this point in your suburb where everybody sort of goes to congregate and have a lot of different events. And the downtown's got a lot of great restaurants and shops. And the community is really great about supporting all those businesses downtown. So for that reason, West Linn has a really great downtown. One thing I will say though about the downtown, it's not exactly centrally located, and that's going to take me into our short list of cons. And the first one is that West Linn itself as a city is sort of discombobulated, for lack of a better word or a better term. And it's probably because of that history that I mentioned. This isn't some master planned community, a bunch of different little communities and incorporated or unincorporated areas that came together and swallowed each other up. So the whole area itself is kind of like broken up into 3 or maybe 4 areas. You've got Pete's Mountain, which is like full of estate style homes. That's where the Oregon Golf Club is. A lot of homes that are on 2 to 10 acres, a lot of massive estate style homes just on the other side of the Tualatin River. And then you've got the Willamette area, which is where I'm at right now, and all the kind of surrounding old town. And then you've got the hill. The 10th Street exit going up Salamo. This is where a lot of people live on this hill. And then on the other side of the hill towards where the high school is, you've got Highway 43 that takes you into Lake Oswego, past Lake Oswego and into Portland. And the people that live off of Highway 43, they tend, and I hear this from people that live over there and business owners as well, the people that kind of live on that part of that side of West Linn, on that side of the hill, tend to kind of just shop and stay on that side of Highway 43, whereas the people on the hill do tend to come downtown and go to Old Town and into Willamette a little bit more. And then Pete's Mountain is just kind of off on its own. So the whole town itself is a little bit discombobulated. People tend to stick to certain parts of the town based on where they're at. If you live off of Highway 43, you're taking that highway either north to Portland to go to work or go wherever you're going to go, or you're taking the opposite direction to 205. You're never ever going to go to the other side of the hill over on the 10th Street exit where Salamo is. So depending on where you live in West Linn, because it's kind of discombobulated, some areas are sort of isolated from other areas. Not really a big deal if you live here. Some people probably don't notice it. Like I said, I've heard some like business owners mention it, that they just don't see certain people from certain sides of the town, you know, because of the way things are laid out, or you know, for whatever reason. Not a huge con, but again, I had to dig deep for these cons. Next con real quick, cost. This zip code here is one of the most expensive zip codes in the Portland metropolitan area, but it doesn't mean that there's a bunch of fancy restaurants and you know, expensive grocery stores. Everything else, the cost of living is about the same, but the homes here are more expensive. So just to give you an idea, average home values in Portland, as I'm shooting this, around mid-5s, 550, something like that. West Linn is getting closer up into like the 800s. So a pretty significant difference. There's a lot of big houses here too. So it's not necessarily that you're just paying a whole lot more per square foot, you're getting more square footage. A lot of 4 and 5 bedroom homes here. A lot of homes built to cater towards people that need a lot of space. All right, final con, and then I'm gonna give you decide for yourself, the last one that I mentioned. Final con, the shopping and the restaurants here are somewhat limited. We do have some decent shopping for groceries. We've got a Safeway, a Walmart. It's one of those neighborhood Walmarts, so it's not a full-size Walmart. And then there's a Market of Choice for kind of more of your like higher end, like specialty grocery store. Great for cakes too, by the way, if you need a cake. And then we've got some good restaurants here, but maybe not as many restaurants and food choices as some other places in the Portland metropolitan area. So living in West Linn, you may find yourself for groceries, restaurants, going nearby. We just got a new hardware store called Park Rose Hardware, you know, which is great. We did have a hardware store before. It was an Ace Hardware. It's kind of a small hardware store. A lot of people find themselves going next door to Home Depot in Oregon City. So living in West Linn for food and some types of shopping, you might find yourself going to like Lake Oswego, Oregon City, Tualatin, and other nearby cities. It is kind of limited here. Okay, last one. You tell me, is this a pro or a con? So this happened about a year ago when the city renovated and remodeled the downtown. They changed a lot of stuff, including the parking. One thing that the city did was they restructured the parking, they redid the lines, and they put up signs that said that back-in parking was only allowed and that you could get a ticket if you pulled in rather than backing in. Now, the reasoning behind this was because apparently back-in parking is much safer. And so I guess the city and whoever had planned this out had done a lot of research and found that it was safer to have back-in parking. So that's what they did. And I think the reason why that is, if you think about parking in a congested place like a downtown where there's not going to be many empty spots, when you pull into a parking spot, when you have to back out, you can't see the traffic really behind you. Even if you have a backup cam, which not everybody does, but most people do in this day and age, you still can't you can see behind you, but you can't see the traffic that's coming from side to side behind you. So what ends up happening, and I've seen this myself at least a couple dozen times, people pull out, they can't see the car coming, from the north or the south, and then you almost have a car accident. So by forcing people to back in, when you leave your parking spot, you're then pulling out. Where you're sitting in your car is closer to the street, so you can actually see up or down the street and see if there's any traffic coming, instead of when you're pulled in, you have to slowly inch out and just kind of hope that no cars come, or quickly inch out and hope that you don't get honked at and hope that somebody stops if they're close enough to hit you. So the city added this back-in parking, and you wouldn't believe the outrage from the community. Or like I said, maybe you're familiar with this, maybe you have this where you live, maybe you're familiar with back-in parking. Maybe some people like it, maybe some people don't where you live, but people here definitely did not adjust to the back-in parking, so much so that they actually changed the parking back to where you could actually pull in. So they removed the signs and they had to repaint all the lines. I guess it was probably a different angle than if you're backing in. So they had to repaint all the lines because people just totally rejected the idea of only being able to back in when you park. Now again, keep in mind, when you park somewhere, unless you're like on the side of the street or something and you can just keep going, you're gonna have to back up when you leave. So it's a matter of, do you want to back in when you get there and pull out when you leave? Or do you want to pull in when you get there and back out when you leave? And I think that's where some of the safety issues come in, is backing out without being able to see very well is where you get your accidents. So it sounds like the city probably made the right call, but the people just didn't like it. So we're back to where we were with pulling straight in and backing out into traffic and just hoping that somebody doesn't hit you when you back out. So I want to know what you think about that. Do you prefer to back in when you arrive somewhere, or do you prefer to pull in and then back out when you leave that place? Let us know in the comments. And if you're still watching this video by now, I'm sure you're interested in moving or learning more about West Linn or surrounding towns. You can call, text, email, or like I've mentioned, you can click the link below in the description if you want to schedule a Zoom call with us. And if this video helped you, give us a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure and hit the subscribe button. Take care, everyone.